Okay, this is part 2 of a special report on the religious knowledge of the Cherokee Indians by J. Murray Rawson. So pay attention to the religious similarities and parallels to your own beliefs, especially if you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And let's get into it. How we kept our history. Many, many years ago, there lived a particular chief who had a very wise counselor and a medicine man. One day the chief was saddened because he knew that it was very important to figure out a way in which the history of the Cherokee people and his clan might be left for them, so that they would not deviate from the true ways, some already having started. Approaching the medicine man, he asked, "Old wise one, how am I to leave the history and the teachings of our people so that all will remember things pertaining to our past and our ways of life?" The medicine man answered him, "Go and purify yourself, then face the wind." The old chief did as instructed. First of all, he went to the river and washed to prepare himself for the purification. While he did this, he had others of the tribe go and prepare the inside of the sweat lodge. It was very hot within. He went into the sweat lodge and stayed there for 2 days and 2 nights, going without food and water during the whole time. Following the second night, he left the lodge and went to the river to wash and cool off. He then ascended a nearby hill called by the name of Where the Eagle Rests. He remained on this hill 3 days and 3 nights. While there, he sang and prayed to the Creator of all things, hoping that he might be shown through a vision how he might be able to rest his troubled heart from the concern that worried him. On the 7th day, his spirit left his body and went to the sky world. There Brother Wolf and Brother Bear met him. They took him to the chief of the chiefs of the sky world. In this meeting with the Creator Chief, the chief of the Cherokee was shown and told much. He received specific instruction from the Creator Chief on a way to preserve the history of his people. When his spirit was returned to his body, he went to see the medicine man once more. The wise one patiently waited for the old chief to relate his experience. The chief told him of the experience he had, what he had seen, and the instruction he had received, and that the work was to be implemented by the medicine man. The wise one, being very understanding and wise, did as the chief had instructed him to do. The first true words of the people then were put on wood. Then in time they were placed on rocks. Further in time they were written on paper leaves. Later again they were written and scribed on gold, copper, and silver sheets. This was done because the wood did not last long enough, and the rocks broke, and the paper leaves deteriorated. Therefore, it was decided that only gold, copper, and silver talking leaves, scribed with pictures, would be used. As time pressed onward, it was found that very few of the people were gaining a knowledge of the sacred ways of the old ones, as well as their history, because the metal-talking leaves were kept confined due to their sacredness. It was suggested that some of the people were using the wise teachings and history for their benefit only. This was a matter of great concern for the chief, for it is apparent that he had used the historical information in a wrong manner. Therefore, as a punishment, he was attacked by a wolf. Prior to his death from this attack, the chief was asked by the wolf why he had taken it upon himself to use the old sacred ways of self-gain. The chief, knowing that that was wrong, consequently the wolf had attacked him, so that the chief would feel some remorse and anguish prior to his death. Nevertheless, the chief was granted one wish for the good that he had done. The wolf asked the chief if his wish was to have life again as a wolf. The chief replied in the negative. Again, the wolf asked if he would care to have his life as a bear, to which the chief's response was once more in the negative. The chief, reasoning that all living things had to come to an end and die, said he would much rather remain on the earth as a river, because in so doing he could travel far and wide, seeing his people grow day by day. He could be a provider for them of food and life, water. By being a river, he felt that he would be able to contribute to their well-being, to right all the wrong he might have caused them. The chief died and was turned into a large river, which passed by the homes of all his people to this very day. The river stretches throughout the land and empties from one sea to another. It is called Lake Hope, Lake Erie. This is how the Cherokee kept and preserved their history. Examples existent today are all the rocks still left to the sight of everyone to see, and as well as the innumerable other ways of the ancient writings that have been found. Cherokee Creation Legend. The Cherokee legends that have been kept alive from generation to generation, from time immemorial, the story of the spiritual being who created the earth, sun, moon, and stars, as well as the governing of their orbital sanctuaries in the universe, pattern of their creation. This being is called Yohawa, but was later changed to Yowa in reverence to his name. It is a belief of the Cherokee that Yowa created the world in 7 days, and that in Nutalekwa, or in the first new moon of autumn, with the fruits all ripe, God made the first man of red clay, an Indian. Let's look at footnote 1. It must be understood that in the realization of creation of first man and first woman, the Indian people believe that they are the parents of all present existing human families, because first man was created out of red earth. This identifies him with the red race of today, the Indian people. Similarly, Buddha is an Oriental. To the people of that race, God is white, perhaps Caucasian, to the people of the white race. And the Creator God is Indian to the people of the red race. When the Creator visited the Indian, he called them my children, and said that the Great Father had sent him to them. He had also been sent to first man, therefore reasoning that the Great Father of red people must also be red man, therefore an Indian. Explanation. Note of theory by the interviewer. The Cherokee also believe that God made woman from one of the ribs belonging to the first man. Although it is not known why, the general belief exists that all people prior to the time of the Great Flood were Indians, or, to be exact, red people. The Oyatageronan, or Cherokee Indians, believe that in the beginning all living things lived together in the sky world, which was above the sky vault. One of the chief concerns among the dwellers of the sky world were the crowding conditions of both the people and the animals. One day someone inquired of the Great Father, chief of all things, what existed below the sky vault. He said there existed water below the sky vault. One of the animal children, little water beetle, by name Beaver Grandchild, asked if he could go down and perhaps see what he could learn. As he flew down from the sky world, he darted in every direction over the surface of the water, but could find no firm place to rest. He dived to the bottom of the water world and resurfaced with some mud, which began growing. As it increased, it extended itself on every side, becoming the island we call Earth. It was then fastened to the sky with 4 giant ropes. However, no one remembers who did this. At first the earth was very flat, soft, and wet. The animals were very anxious to go down to earth so that no one would be pushed off of the sky world. Prior to their leaving the sky world, and due to their anxiety of wanting to leave the sky world first, they sent out different birds to discover if the earth was amply dry to be lived upon. They became very tired as they flew around the earth island because they could find no place where they did not sink into the soft mud. This news left the people and animals in the sky world very discouraged. When more time had elapsed, it was decided that the great buzzard should be sent down to see if the earth had dried sufficiently. This was the grandfather of all the buzzard brothers and sisters. He flew very close to the ground, only to discover that the earth was still very soft. As he reached the area of the Cherokee country, his giant wings began to stroke the ground because he too had become weary and extremely tired as his earthbound episode and investigation. It is said that the valleys that existed in the Cherokee country became mountains due to the grandfather buzzard's striking his giant wings upon the ground. Seeing that many of the valleys of the soft earth were being turned into mountains, the people and animals of the sky world reasoned that the entire earth would become mountainous unless they called for the return of Grandfather Buzzard to the sky world. It seems that to this day the heart of the Cherokee country is full of mountains. Finally the earth was dry, and all the animals came down from the sky world. The earth was still dark. Therefore, they took the sun and set it in a track to cross the firmament daily. It ran from east to west. At first, the sun was so close that all the animals almost burned up. The red crawfish had its shell scorched a bright red, so that its meat was spoiled. Because of this, the Cherokee will not eat the meat of the red crawfish. To remedy the closeness of the sun, the chief medicine man put the sun another hand's breadth higher in the air. However, it was still too hot. The sun was raised another hand's breadth, and another, and yet another, until it was raised just under the sky arc. It had finally been raised to just the right placement. Therefore, it was left in the highest place, or, as the medicine men and women call it, the 7th height, because it is 7 hands' breadths above the earth. Therefore, the sun routinely travels daily along its track, and at night it returns to its starting place. Another world yet exists beneath the one the Cherokee people presently dwell. It is similar to the Cherokee world, except that the people live on an opposite basis. When the Cherokee are experiencing summer, those on the world underneath experience winter, and similarly, winter in the Cherokee world means summer in the world beneath. The streams that run down from the high mountains are the trails by which this underworld can be reached, and the springs at the heads of these streams are the doorways which one can enter. No one is allowed to go to this other world without first being purified, and without fasting from 4 to 7 days. The intruder into the other world must be guided by one of the people dwellers who live in the other world. Entrance into the other world must be done during a certain time of the season of the year. One can tell the season in the other world by the water temperature in the streams. In the summer it is cooler than the outer air, and in the winter it is warmer. It is not known Who told the animals and the plants to keep awake for 7 nights when they were first made? Perhaps it was the Great Father Chief. However, as the young men fasted and kept awake, they prayed for their medicine to work. The plants and animals tried to do this, and nearly all were awake through the first night. The following night, however, several went to sleep as drowsiness set in. As the nights continued, others were overcome with drowsiness and fell asleep. On the 7th night, only 2 animals were found awake, the owl and the panther. The owl represents wisdom and swiftness, and the panther represents darkness. Perhaps there might have been another 2 who also remained awake. To these animals, the Great Father Chief gave the power to see at night, as well as to prey upon those who had fallen asleep and who must sleep in the nights forever. To the plants with living spirits, the cedar tree, the pine tree, the spruce tree, and the holly and the laurel, it was given to remain green always, as well as to be the best plants for making medicine, for their obedience in remaining awake for the 7 nights. To the other plants it was said, "Because you have not endured to the end, you shall lose your hair every winter," and so it is. In the Ark of the Covenant, the first law speaks of the creation of man and about the tree of life. In accordance to this, the ancient Cherokee belief is that the Cherokee used to live in the high heaven with the Great Father Chief before they came to live on the earth, which earth is now a testing ground and a proving site for mortal man. It is a temporary place for men to dwell. One day the Sky Chief had a son whose jealousy over his mother's unborn child caused him great anxiety and inevitably caused him to err. This jealousy was aroused by his thinking that his mother would love the newborn more than she loved him. In the sky there existed a tree that gave life, called the Tree of Life. It was a brilliant tree that gave light to all the sky world. The jealous son decided to cut the tree down. It fell from the sky world, leaving a large hole in the sky world. Because the brilliance of the light was not present any longer, the mother went to the place of the tree and found it not existing. She found that the further the tree fell from the sky world, the more intensely the darkness increased. The Sky Chief came to the place that his spouse, the mother of his son, was, and saw the same as she. Asking his spouse what had happened, she replied that she did not know what had happened. However, he accused her of chopping down the tree of life and condemned her, pushing her into and through the hole that was left in the sky world by the tree. She and all of her seed after her were recipients of the same condemnation because of this deed. However, there existed birds below the sky world at this time, who caught her while she fell, and carried her to the land upon the earth. Because the planet was full of water, the birds had to call upon the musk rats, who were swimming in the water. At that time, all the animals could speak the same language, so they could all communicate with one another. Therefore, the birds told the muskrats that they carried a woman who was with child and needed to place her on land. The muskrats then went into the water to speak with Brother Mud Turtle. The Mud Turtle surfaced and inquired what the matter was. The birds told him that they had a woman who was with child and who also needed a place to dwell upon. The Mud Turtle then went down into the water and took a piece of mud and brought it to the surface and formed the first land. The birds then placed the woman on the land. In her due time, she walked into the waters to bear her child. Upon returning out of the waters, she carried a baby, and thus the belief that this is how the sea was formed, for the waters now had become the sea. When the Sky Chief realized that it was his son who had cut down the tree of life so that it fell and created a hole in the sky world, he took his son to the hole and pushed him through it, and told him that he would be condemned for the transgression forever. The Cherokee called his son by the name of Baboi, which to the Cherokee chief and medicine man sounds like one of Baal's names, more particularly the Ekron name of Baal-zebub. This story is recorded on the first tablet of crystal, which has existed for the last 7 generations assuredly, which is inside the Ark of the Covenant. Undoubtedly, it is perhaps beyond those generations in age. According to the myth keepers of the Cherokee, before the world was sufficiently dry to support people, plants, and animals, these further inhabitants all lived together and spoke a common language in the sky world. In regards to the bearing of children, it is said that after man was created on the earth, there lived a brother and a sister who together dwelt in the land. One day the brother struck the sister with a fish, which represents life, which is to say, the power of life giver, and she bore a child. Every 7 days she would bear a child until there was the danger that not enough space would be available upon the land for all the new arrivals from the sky world. It was then determined that a woman would only bring forth a child once every year. And this is how the bearing period of children came into existence. Sacred beliefs of the Cherokee. The Cherokee protested the completion of the Tellico Dam in Tennessee 1979 because they realized that the waters filling the dam would back up sufficiently to flood both their sacred burial grounds and a sacred cave where they kept ancient sacred religious articles. It took about 2 or 3 days by foot to arrive at this sacred cave, which contained metal plates upon which the history and story of the tribe had been written. There, also, one could find paper-like materials kept in metal cylinders. In another cave, there are goldish-looking metal plates, which are held together by what seems to be a wire or ring. These the medicine man can open and read. When the early missionaries went among the Cherokee people, they were astonished at the similarity between the Cherokee religious traditions and the biblical accounts. These missionaries tried to destroy as many of the books made of gold, silver, copper, and stone as they could. They also burned the books that were made of paper-like materials, thus erasing any knowledge of the people's old and true ways. Although many of these records were destroyed, others were kept in sacred places to keep many of the old ways alive for the benefit of the Cherokee. They are regarded as being in safe places, as the time is not yet come for the great young warrior king to return to tell the Cherokee to bring them out, so that the Creator can once again use them in the sacred and holy ways to recount the religious views of the people. When he returns, he shall tell the Cherokee to bring out all of these sacred treasures so that the ancient true ways of the people may return to them, and they may live in peace and harmony once more. The Cherokee believed, too, that one of their sacred books was buried in New York. Footnote 2. On May 12, 1972, J. Murray Rawson was interested to know if Buffalo Tiger knew where the ancient teachings of his people, the Miccosukee, were located. Buffalo Tiger responded that the records were buried in a hill in New York, which corroborates the Cherokee chief and medicine man's story. However, to corroborate this statement, Brother Rawson went to the headquarters of the Seminole tribe to see if the people there might tell a different story. He approached Chief Howard Tommy with the question, "I understand your ancient teachings have been lost." He and Don Osceola, who was sitting there, nodded their heads. Chief Tommy said, "Yes, they are buried up in New York." Don said, "They are buried up in New York in a hill by a tree." These particular records they know were in the possession of the old white chief at the last battle, and were buried at the hill where this last battle took place, the hill where the blood ran red all day, or Death Mountain. They are buried on the east side, somewhere near the base, to be preserved. All the medicine man and holy people knew about the records, for they themselves buried the great white chief at that time, knowing that he had the records. However, it is unknown who actually buried them. What makes these records so very important to the Cherokee is that they contain their ancient religious history and are considered to be very sacred. They contain the teachings of ancient prophets that walked among the people, as well as the sacred covenants they once received when they walked in the knowledge of the great laws given to them by the Creator, who was Yahweh. Presently, many Indians are trying to locate the place of these records so that they can obtain a more accurate account of their ancient teachings. If these records are not found, the tribes, such as the Iroquois, Penobscot, Algonquin, Pequot, Cherokee, and other northeastern tribes will await their return. This is why it is so important for the young great warrior man to come, as he shall reveal where the ancient records are buried. The tribes were told to stay true and to wait for the records to be returned to them. These records will be readily identified without question by the tribe, because they were told that their hearts would tell them so. At that time, they will accept the records brought to them and will know that the true church will exist because of them. Most of the various Indian tribes in the United States and Canada await the return of the ancient true religion they once had. It is through these ancient records that they will positively know that the true religion or church will return to them. This is what the holy teachers and other certain people who belonged to a secret religious society taught them. These holy teachers were those who wrote the records. Some of these records were kept from the time before the crossing of the forefathers from across the great waters. Other records were written by the forefathers after their arrival upon the land. Some of the stories contained in the records tell that Yahweh visited the Indians, and in that visit Yahweh walked and talked with and taught the people his ways. It is said that when he appeared, there was a blinding light, a voice from heaven spoke, and a shining star appeared. The records also contain the story of the destruction of some very wicked temples, because some of the holy temples had been desecrated by the people. In addition to the true ways that Yahweh taught the people, he also taught them how to cook, how to plant, when to harvest. He also taught that if the children would be obedient to their parents, they would live a long time. When Yahweh came, he had special powers to heal the sick. He taught them peace and life. This is why he came, to teach the people the right way. He promised the people that he would return. He also chose 12 men to carry on his ministry among the people. It is expected that the ancient record to the tribes must come through the religious leaders, such as the medicine men, who are spiritual leaders in their tribes. The people will then receive it if the medicine men agree unitedly, as the Indians are already looking for the religious instruction which is now lost. They want to expect an Indian leader to teach them. Therefore, they await this record to come to them through an Indian. This record's teachings will return the old religion to the tribe and initiate the waited-for new religion. However, the tribe is not prepared for the changeover, and this may be a hardship. The knowledge of metal making has been lost. However, the knowledge and use of gold as an art that was passed down from father to son. As the time comes, all of the records will be brought to the Indians. At that time, the tribe will see itself as being or belonging to the higher order, that is, the same order to which Yahweh belongs, by which order he also ministers. The higher order has the power to administer in all the affairs of Yahweh to his children, while the lower order ministers only in the power delegated to men in their affairs. Anyone who rejects the teachings of the records will be banished, outcast, or suffer death. However, when a young, light-skinned warrior brings the records, his teachings will be rejected, but in the end, the people will accept him. Prior to the return of Yahweh, the people walking upon the land of promise and all over the world will be ungodly and wicked. They will be in need of higher powers to protect them. It is also known that a war will break out between the black people and the white people, and that this situation will bring all Indians together to protect one another. They will go to the mountains for their protection. Therefore, when a young warrior is come, there will be a cleansing at the last battle. The light-skinned people, or whites, will come to the Indians for their protection. But first, a young warrior must come forth. When the birth of a new nation, a new religion, is come, there will then exist also one brotherhood, like in the beginning. There will also be a sacred city built in the middle of the country, perhaps in Missouri. The Cherokee also believe that in the latter days the people will need to go to the hills to be protected from the great evils and destructions that shall visit the land and sweep the earth. Other races of people will also come to the hills. A great young warrior chief will come forth to lead the Cherokee people there. It is the belief of many tribes that this light-skinned young chief will wear red, with the sacred marking of the bent cross on his clothing. The protection of the hills will be necessary because it is said that the heavens will open and protect the Indian people with other people who shall join them. They will be protected from the pitch that will be sent to the earth. Then fire shall reign over that, consuming and destroying all wickedness, for the earth shall be cleansed by fire. Only then will the people all leave the refuge of the hills and begin to live as in the old days. there are 14 sanctuaries which will protect them. In some of the legends of the Cherokee, one will recognize their knowledge of the great flood which covered the whole earth. When De Soto met the Cherokee for the first time, he was astounded to learn that they knew about the flood and an ark which saved the sacred family from drowning. It is said that all the people living at that time were red people. Before the time of the great flood, there were preachers, doctors, and prophets who taught the Cherokee to obey Yahweh, as well as their parents. The people were also warned of an impending flood, which would destroy all wickedness from the face of the land, if the ways of the people were not corrected. The people were also taught that the earth would receive this destruction by water only once. In the last days of the earth, the people were told the earth would once again receive destruction, but then by fire. It was said that Yahweh would send in the last days a shower of pitch and then a shower of fire, which would burn everything, causing a cleansing like the great flood. For there must first be a washing of things, then there must follow a purification of things. The reason the earth needed a washing prior to the great flood was because wickedness was spreading throughout the land, so that the people were becoming an enemy to the laws of Yahweh. At length, a great messenger was sent to the people from above to warn them of the impending flood if they would not turn away from their wickedness. Yahweh then told a man to make a house that would float on the water. Also, this man was to take his family and some of the different kinds of animals into it. He was told to take the sacred books and some of the holy teachers as well. Yahweh then sent the rains at the allotted time, so that it continued for 40 days and 40 nights. Simultaneously, water began gushing out of the ground, so that in time the house was raised upon the waters and floated away. After a length of time had passed, this man sent out a raven from the house to discover if the land had dried sufficiently to leave the floating house. A dove returned with a leaf in its mouth. This is also the Cherokee symbol for peace. It was not long after the dove had returned that the man found the house resting on dry ground on the top of a huge hill. This was in the spring of the year. All who had ridden within the house, the family, teachers, and all the animals that he had taken, left it and began to make a new life. They became farmers and tilled the ground of the new world. It generally surprises people to know that such biblical characters as Hama, Abraham, and Wasi, Moses, with their stories paralleling their biblical counterparts, actually exist in the legends of the Cherokee. The task was comparatively easy to convert the Cherokee to Christianity within a period of about 30 years. It was never known if the missionaries were teaching the Cherokee stories and doctrinal principles from the Christian books, Bible, or from the Cherokee sacred beliefs. It all seemed to be one and the same. The Cherokee have always believed that on another planet, a heavenly and holy planet, there exists a heavenly mother who lives with our heavenly Father. This belief is very common among all tribes. The word heaven has always existed in the Cherokee language. It is not a word that was brought to them through the Christian missionaries. The Cherokee have always been a religious and humble people because of their conviction and faith in the one true God. The one supreme being was called Yahweh, but later changed to just Yahweh to keep the name in holy reverence. The name was never said except by certain priests who were permitted to say it aloud. Yahweh was a unity of three beings, called the Elder of the Fires Above, Chota-a-Nelehi, perhaps synonymous to the Holy Trinity of the Christian faith. Other Cherokee people called him the Great Spirit, or the Creator, because of the legends which have kept the belief alive of the spiritual being who created the earth, the sun, and the moon and stars. Fire was commanded to take care of the needs of mankind using smoke as its messenger. Footnote 3. The Indian belief is that the Creator placed his energies into the fire to give life, thus creating the sun by his might. In turn, the smoke became the symbol for the spirit of life. Tobacco, when lit, will give off a white smoke, symbol for purity. Therefore, taking the prayers of a person to the giver of life, as it ascends and disappears, as the messenger spirit of life. Because of the conversion of the Cherokee to the Christian faith, there arose sentiments and division among the people of the tribe. While many of the Cherokee worshipped the sun, moon, stars, and other gods, most of the Cherokee people believed in the teachings and of the existence of the three beings above, who had created all men and their surroundings. These would also judge all men according to their deeds of good or wrong. They also fixed the time and manner of death. The names of these three beings were Yuhahetekwa, the Father God, who is the great head of all power, Atonoti, the Sun God, who is Yahweh, the Creator, and Usquahula, the Spirit God. These three beings are said to be always unanimous in thought and action. They sit on three white seats above and are the only objects to which all worship and prayers are directed. The angels are their messengers who come down to earth to attend to the affairs of men. The Cherokee people believe that angels can also be people with God-given powers, who are true in heart and are able to administer to the needs of the people, such as knowing how to cure sick people and how to administer the ordinances of the old way, baptism, marriage, and the death rites. Yahweh is the name of the great King God. His name is very sacred. He was a man, and yet he was also a spirit. He was a great and glorious being. He was so highly revered that never was his name used in common talk. Only the high priests or the chief council medicine men could use his name or say it in reverence. If anyone was heard saying or using his name in a wrong way, that person was put to death. If anyone used or said his name without proper permission or out of his jurisdiction and authorship, that person was also put to death. Certainly, this was one name that could not be misused. The great king commanded the people to rest every seventh day. The people were not to work on this day. It was a day of devotion for speaking about the Father God, His Son, and the Spirit. It is believed that the number 7 has become a holy number to the Cherokee, coming from the commandment of resting on the seventh day. There are many evidences of the sacred number 7 among the Cherokee. There are only 7 clans: the Bird Clan, the Paint Clan, the Deer Clan, the Wolf Clan, the Blue Clan, the long hair clan, the wild potato clan. Each clan has a chief. Also, the council house of the Cherokee is a 7-sided building, with each chief of the 7 clans having a designated section in one of the 7 council house chambers. In the middle of the council house burns a fire kindled with 7 different kinds of wood. One can recognize it in the 7 heights or steps to the heavens. The 7th heaven is the highest, where one can reside with Yahweh. Still strong in the beliefs of the Cherokee is the remembrance of one called Itzah. The events of this life and death tell that Itzah died on a cross on Skull Mountain. He wore a red robe, which was made by a Cherokee woman. Upon his head, he wore thistles or thorns, and died for the Cherokee people. It is believed by the Cherokee that Itzah is Jesus and was Cherokee. This great chief, son of Skyworld, climbed a hill called Death Face Hill, which is also the same called Skull Mountain. There he hung for the Cherokee people, his side opened by an arrow. The numbers 4, 7, 12, and 14 are sacred numbers. The colors red, black, white, and yellow are the 4 holy colors. Each has a meaning and a variety of symbolic meanings. Red, for instance, represents God, High Maker, and red people, to mention a few. Black represents Yahweh, Voice Thunder, Truth, and also the black people. White represents the Holy Spirit and white people. Yellow represents the peace of God's love and warmth, and also the Oriental people. The colors blue, purple, and green are also sacred. The blue represents the Spirit of God. It can represent Yahweh as Yahweh the being. It may also represent the Holy Spirit. Thus, it may be said that it represents the 3 holy beings, who are one in purpose. The color blue also means be true. Purple also has synonymous meaning to the color blue. However, it also implies that all 3 spirits are not far distant from one who is seeking them. Green is the color representative of life and Mother Earth. Now, if a person is traveling and comes across a large hill and observes that 3 smaller hills lay in a perpendicular pattern on the large hill's east side, so that the 3 smaller hills form the top bar of a T to the large hill's main body, let it be known that on this mound lay holy people, wise men, and holy teachers resting. This place should not be desecrated. One will be sure of this if on the large hill one will see 4 or 7 trees existing. The 4 trees will incidentally remind the people of remind that person that this place is sacred ground. 7 trees will remind one that this place is a most holy place. Records of metal plates could be buried there due to their sacred nature. However, when one comes across crossed arrows, this will indicate that one is close to an Indian treasure of gold or silver. This symbol will appear on a tree or rock. It also will indicate that the treasure was secured there close to 2,000 feet from that spot. As one searches and finds in the general area an eye or the profile of a face looking or facing in a specific direction, that will be the direction of said treasure. The Cherokee chief and medicine man remembers as a boy that his grandfather, who was a high priest, took him to a cave wherein he saw many sacred and religious items. He also saw that at the time he entered the cave, the Ark of the Covenant. He saw the crystals that were contained within. He saw records made of metal, some being gold, silver, and copper in appearance. The ark had been located near a place called Gatlinburg, Tennessee, before it was moved to the area that was flooded by the dam, the place of ancient Cherokee burial mounds. From there, it was moved into Georgia, where now it rests within the confines of a cave. It is accompanied there with other religious and sacred articles. He has also indicated that he had seen some people touch the Ark of the Covenant and be thrust down because of their negligence in touching it. He remembers as a boy that he went to a cave where the Ark of the Covenant was located. In this place was held an annual ceremony for the same. Certain people were charged with the maintenance of the ark and its surroundings. They would go to spread the sacred tobacco around it. Specific people would pronounce prayers, while others who were allowed to do so would clean it, and they would cover it with a tent-like structure representing a very small tent figure. Aside from northern Georgia and Tennessee, where there are places with gold and other sacred artifacts, Georgia and North Carolina also have locations where one can find some tablets deposited. Perhaps the last ceremony held with the ark was in Kentucky about in 1973. Okay, we will continue with part 3 and continue with the early Cherokee history.